Welcome to Paranormal, the New Normal. So excited to be back once again. It's been a little while, it feels like. I don't know, it just feels like it has. I don't think it has been that long, but I'm back once again to try to make this world more normal. Does it ever happen? Oh, Lordy, no. Lordy, no. And I don't think we're going to get there today too much. We'll try, but it never usually happens. My listeners love my optimism, But that voice you hear is my guest, who I am very excited to have, Cassandra DeAnn, who is a certified human design reader. And yes, we're going to find out what all that's about in a little bit. And she is also the host of Things I Talk About podcast, which such a simple, glorious name. I like it. I really do. It leaves it open to so much stuff you could talk about without narrowing you down to something. Things I wish I did when I started my podcast instead of ways I went, but oh well. So first things first, how are you doing tonight, Cassandra?
I'm doing pretty good, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to explore the mystical realms with you.
Well, shit, call me Lincoln. Let's go. I'm down for that. But all right, so first things first, the first question I ask everybody on this show is, what got you into the paranormal, spiritual, and for this episode I'll throw in mystical world that we live in?
Yeah.
Like, what got you into this side of the world rather than the boring, mundane 9 to 5 office job type of the world?
Yeah, wow, that's an excellent starting question. So I actually would say that I definitely was not the person that would be here where I am now. I experienced a spontaneous spiritual awakening a couple years ago, which a little background is I came from a very sheltered, very controlled, religiously abusive upbringing. So I never really entertained any sort of questions of the universe and the beyond, and ghost wasn't a thing. We were taught even the dinosaurs weren't real and they were made up. So there was definitely, my mind was groomed to be shut off, to kind of do and be conditioned to whatever it is that they wanted me to do. So I joke that I was not the likely candidate for a spiritual awakening, but yet it happened during a solar eclipse. That I later found out was in a predominant placement in my astrology chart. And astrology kind of was the first area I feel like, kind of like the veil lifted. And that was the first realm I explored, which ultimately led me down all sorts of interesting rabbit holes and star seeds and human design. And now I'm a certified human design reader and talk about all of these interesting spiritual topics with my clients and other people. So yeah.
Wow, so much to unpack in that little bit of a statement. But I swear, you just gave me probably 30 minutes at least worth of content. But we'll get to all that in a minute. And I love that start with the spiritual awakening because I've had multiple people tell me that I'm going through mine at this moment over the last month or two and going forward still, hopefully. But I mean, I kind of grin in like a way where I'm like, I don't know if it, chaos comes with a spiritual awakening, I've been told multiple times. So,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of chaos lately. So, it's possible. I according to my Reiki coach, I am an empath. So,
Okay. Yeah.
so hey, we'll see. Give me a year time and we'll see what happens. I'm in no rush, but I'm also kind of in a rush. I don't know. It's in between. But let me ask the second question I ask everybody so I can get it out of the way and I can get to all these hot topics I really want to hit. But have you ever had an experience with any kind of spirit or cryptid or extraterrestrial or anything in the paranormal realm?
Oh my gosh. So yes. And the first story that comes to mind was actually ever since I was little. I've always been someone that's very active at night. So I mean, even when I was young, my mom said that I would somehow get out of the house, sleepwalk out of the house, and be out in the snow, and they would just not be sure where or how, I did that. I talked in my sleep all the time. When my husband and I were dating, he would call me and hold conversations, and I would say all of these crazy things and have an entire conversation and be completely asleep. So I had a regular nightly visitor that was ever since I was young. And as I mentioned, how I was raised, like we were taught not even to believe in ghosts because it's like you have to be good and you go to heaven or you go to hell. There's no in between, there's no such thing as ghosts. There's demons, but not ghosts. So I never had an outlet to talk to anybody about it. And when I married, my husband was used to multiple times a night. I would wake up screaming bloody murder, and he would have to try to like snap me out of it. Then one day, I actually was able to see a visual face of this person. It was kind of foggy and the shape of the face, but it was nothing in color. It was more like outlines and smoke and gray, and it was very unusual. As at this particular time, I was trying to be the good, fundamentally raised Christian girl. And so I found later that I could recognize the face, and I looked through what albums and photos I have, and I couldn't identify it. And then eventually I stumbled upon a photo that was my grandfather on my father's side. We Part of being raised the way we were very sheltered from relatives. Even I didn't know much about my grandparents. I didn't even know if my grandfather knew me when I was born because he died when I was, as far as I know, before I was born. I found out he did know me. He did meet me. This was him. And then later, after my awakening, as a part of a spiritual group, training for intuitives I did, we were in a mediumship class, and all of the girls started describing this man, and they each were describing the same person that they were receiving, and it was my grandfather. So after I found out though that was who it was, I never had that experience again. It was just like that, and all of a sudden, it was like, okay, she knows who I am. I'm good. She knows that I watch over her. And so, yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was thinking you said Catholic earlier for some reason, but yeah. I mean, if you're raised Christian, then purgatory really isn't a thing talked about
Yeah.
Christianity because I was raised Christian as well. Not exactly the same way you were, but I was raised Christian as well,
Yeah.
in a more placid setting, I would say. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
Christian, but it wasn't like forced into us. I mean, well, they tried, but they failed. But it's sad because my best friend who passed away back in 17, he was raised very strict Catholic, and his father
Okay.
reminds me of your family a lot. So
Yeah.
it's I whenever I hear stories like that, it just hits me because I've spent so long hearing his stories of growing up, and it's just like, God, if I could write a book about those stories, if I could remember half of them, it would be a bestseller. But it'd be for sad reasons, but it'd be a bestseller.
Yeah.
So you had a see when you said you had a nightly visitor, I was almost thinking like, "Ooh, alien, alien, alien," and then like a couple seconds later, I was like, "Oh, ghost. Okay, okay, ghost. We love ghosts on the show, so hell yeah." nothing like a good ghost story. Really isn't. But so, I mean, that makes sense that he went away after you got. That was probably why he was showing up. Was his
Yeah.
unfinished business? Was he wanted to make sure you knew that he knew who you were?
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty neat. And that's funny, the alien talk. I definitely love a good alien talk. That was a early portion of my spiritual awakening journey where I kind of went down that rabbit hole. But at the time that this was going on, like I didn't entertain anything. I mean, my husband kind of entertained the possibility, but I mean, if dinosaurs were out of the question, I sure the hell wasn't going to be exploring aliens.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure you know aliens exist at this point,
Yeah.
but dinosaurs still may exist too in some degree. Just a heads
Yeah.
up.
Oh,
So,
obviously.
well, I no, I mean just beyond. I mean beyond like alligators, crocodiles, and that like the stuff we know exists in multiple populations. But
Yeah.
there actually is beliefs of some living bigger dinosaurs around the world in different
I
in
wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
South
I
America.
nothing surprises me anymore. And it's just there's so much that hasn't been dove into or explored, and I don't know. I tend to, this now after what I've gone through, I mean, I've already gone through the shock and awe. At this point, I'm pretty much willing to say, okay, yeah, yeah, I can buy that.
Well, that's the mindset we want people to have in this show. But and yeah, living dinosaurs are a thing in South America, Africa, even in Western America to some degree. So
Okay.
good old Thunderbirds. But
Okay.
so you did mention, and actually, yeah, since you kind of did bring it up a second ago. Well, actually, before we go to that, let's talk astrology for a second because I've had a few astrologers on the show, and I've even had a full astrological chart reading done in the show. It literally took like a half hour of the show, but it was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I don't know if my listeners even give a shit, but for me, it was interesting. But and I mean, it's astrology is fascinating to me because
Yeah.
the fact that the stars and planets, I mean, yes, everything is connected in the universe, everything works together in energy and all that. I believe all that. I truly do. But it's just almost mind breaking to believe that everything in the sky affects our life so much because astrological readings, everyone I've ever had, is so painstakingly accurate to your life. And
Yeah.
if it's not yet, it will be soon. So, I mean, it's creepy. It's almost creepy. That's the best way I could describe it. It's like, I mean, it's almost like having a spy camera on you and they know what your next move's going to be. Like the stars are watching you. But I mean, it's just, I mean, so when you first got into astrology, like what was the big thing for you with it? Like what really drew you to it?
Yeah, so that actually was sort of the kind of the onion, the layers coming apart the day that I had my experience. It was I I joke that the it's like I just had to crack the door a little bit. And so it was around that time, and like I said, later I found out it was a solar eclipse that day. And I decided I heard somebody talk about the sun, moon, and rising in astrology. And I decided I was going somewhere and had a long drive. So I decided to listen to a podcast. And I picked a podcast that talked about the 12 houses in astrology. And it was the strangest thing because it was like I heard it and it wasn't even looking back at the knowledge I appreciate and enjoy of astrology. It was really, I don't want to say superficial, but it was coming from a place. It was two college age girls that
Mhm.
there was probably more conversation about who liked who and what was going on in their life than there was astrology.
Yeah.
Um but I mean, if there's beginner level, I would say this was even more digestible than that. So I started to listen to it, and these dots just started to connect for me. And I started to just all of a sudden start putting things together. And it wouldn't stop. All day, I was looking into the astrology. And that night, I ended up in tears, crying to my husband. And I said, everything, like my biggest mistakes, my biggest challenges, everything about me, this is a recipe of, my gifts, my everything. And why didn't I know this sooner? And I wouldn't have been able to receive it sooner. It was the timing was right then. So I studied reading the natal charts. I mean, there are some incredible astrologers out there. I will say that my love for astrology turned into human design because I felt like I can sit with somebody an hour and talk astrology, but if you don't know the aspects and the houses and the different importances of the chart, I'm speaking French to you, where human design uses astrology along with other modalities like the I Ching. And I could talk an hour from a chart in that respect. And it was empowering. People left with a practical understanding that they could digest about themselves. So I love, for example, I'm going to be having a guest on my podcast that does the galactic astrology that gets into star seed origins and stuff like that. I'm super excited about that. I haven't, that's not my area of specialties. I'm speaking more generally my clients tend to be at the beginner level. So yeah, but it's astrology in, is really neat. And a big part of human design is, as I said, astrology, and the idea that, now we have language such as the quantum field that we can kind of add to this, where human design talks about it's the neutrino particles that are affiliated with the atmosphere, the cosmos, the everything, and that these all impact and influence and crystallize into who we are, what we're here to do. There's so many other layers to it. But a fun fact I like about astrology is that when I love the ancient alien stuff, and I love the idea that I've heard people say when you look at the knowledge of astrology, because that was one thing in the beginning I'd ask myself. I'm like, so dude, what happened? Were people just so bored that they sat down and like looked at the sky and they're like, oh, that dot right there, I'm gonna call that Mars, and it looks like it might be easily agitated, and so, but I love when you study ancient Sumer and you see these ancient tablets where they already mapped out the solar system,
Yeah.
and the belief that this was not knowledge necessarily that we sat and came up with, but rather it was given to us from other origins.
Yes, and once again, so much to unpack. But yes, a lot of my theories on the way this Earth operates and has operated have to do with ancient aliens, and
Yeah,
we weren't, we didn't exactly evolve here. I mean, we did in a way, but we were put here by
we were
something
helped out a little.
uh, definitely a little more than a little. But I mean, and actually, Mars was given the name Mars by the Romans because that's their god of war. But
Yeah.
and that's why Mars is agitated all the time, because the god of war is always agitated. But I mean, and yes, they were able to map out the stars and the planets and all that, and assign a tribute to them because there's always been people that are connected to the universe somehow,
Oh
connected
yeah.
to fate, Because, like you said, with your spiritual awakening, like it wasn't meant to happen until it happened. That fate is a
Right.
very real thing. We're not meant to. If I could have had my spiritual awakening before I was freaking 35, that would have been great. Would have
Yeah.
probably saved me a lot of money and a lot of heartbreak. But I mean, it's just not the way things are supposed to work. We have to earn our place with abilities. We have to earn our place in the universe. We don't just get handed it, because those who do don't always use it for the best purposes. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. To my previous guest, I've had a lot of people on here that were born with their abilities and they were nurtured by their parents to use it from a young age. And
Yeah.
for those people, it worked out because they had a support system. But
Yeah.
not everybody has a support system, and not everybody is going to use those abilities to the best of methods. So, fate, it's a real thing, people. But, and yes, and you kind of gave me the next segue as you were talking anyway, because I love starseeds. I've had a couple of them on the show over the last year. Actually, one of my first 10 guests, I think, was a starseed, or maybe 15 guests. It's a long time ago. But, I mean, it's just, and it makes sense to our starseeds, because the fact that we are all aliens, or extraterrestrial spirits is a better word, extraterrestrial spirits, basically sitting in a waiting room somewhere up in the great void, waiting to come back down, or once we achieve what our extraterrestrial spirit is meant to do, maybe we go somewhere else. Who knows? I'm not a full believer in heaven. I'm not a full believer in hell. There's
Yeah.
more. There's other planes, but I don't
Yeah.
want to give names. I don't want to give names to them. I talked to people who walk through these planes before in their dreams, and
Oh, yeah.
I mean, astral projection is a very real thing, and it's
Mhm.
kind of creepy, the airplanes that are out there. If you hear people talk about them, listen to my episode of Vincent Field, folks. Oh my God, you'll love it. That's a while ago too. Just go listen to them all, please. But I mean, star seeds are they're real. That's all I can say is they're real, and they interest the hell out of me, because these are the ones who can activate and know what they are.
Yeah.
I mean, they say they don't feel like Earth is home.
Mhm.
I don't know what that feels like, because I don't know where else would be home. Like, I don't have a feeling like that. It's just the way it works. And I'm totally talking with my hands underneath the table right now, but that's the Italian in me. So if you see my shoulders move, folks, that's why. But I mean, so are you a starseed, do you think, or no?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's also a very interesting conversation, as you know, because it wasn't one that I entertained at all earlier. And then after my awakening, I kind of went into this process where I wanted to first off deconstruct my religion. And I mean, that was incredible because I found out so much information. There was so much outside of Christianity that happened way before Christianity that we were never taught. I can still remember, calling my brother and saying, dude, like, did you know, like, the beginning of everything just wasn't like like Christians, and there's like all these other things. And so I kind of deconstructed my religion. And once I did, I got curious about Akashic record readings. So I did an Akashic record reading. And when I did, she identified my soul origins, and she kind of explained the process. And she says, I don't want anybody to get frightened about this, but, look up the term blueprinter and look up star seeds, get the book 12th Planet by Zachariah Stitchin, and get the book of Keepers of the Garden by Dolores Cannon. And so she identified that I have an extremely, extremely old soul origin. And the interesting part is blueprinters are not really spoken of often in the term of starseed, because they were believed to be the closest original energy to source that was given sort of the blueprint for the species of humanity and this whole earth experience. Well, later on, months later, I had another Akashic record reader and she says, "You are from the Andromeda Galaxy and you are a blueprinter." So at this point, I'm like, okay, now two people have identified me as whatever the hell this blueprinter thing is. And so I started looking into it. And I remember sitting my husband down and saying, "Honey, I think I'm an alien." And he laughed because he was like, "I knew it," because he always entertained aliens more than I did. And so I have been identified as my original soul origin is blueprinters, which highly resonates to me. And I've also been identified as having very strong Lyran past lives as well as Palladian.
Oh, Palladians. I've heard that term a lot. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, Andromeda Galaxy, of course, too, but Palladians, I had to learn how to spell that with all the times it's been
Yeah.
in my show. I had to learn how to spell it so I could type it in the topic list for each episode. I would put them out on social media, but
Yeah.
and see, that's where the whole thing right there comes in with being Christian too, because source, God,
Yep. Yep.
blueprinters,
Yep.
angels.
Mhm.
Oh, you
Yep.
mean Christianity? Wait a minute, Jeremy. Do you mean does that mean that Christianity was stolen from something? Yeah, of course it was. Everything was.
Yeah.
Everything's been stolen from something. I mean, God,
Yeah. Yeah.
all the different ancient god sagas are all
Mhm.
stolen from each other. For God's sake, I mean,
Yeah.
they all stole from crap Mesopotamia with Gilgamesh.
Yep.
They all
Yep.
stole from that. Basically, it's
Yeah.
where it all started. But
Mhm.
which is where a lot of our paranormal beliefs come from too. Is that story?
Yep.
But we won't go fully down that rabbit hole today. This show is okay. I mean, it is kind of about mythology to some
Yeah.
degree, but not fully. So I'll say that, folks, for the episodes where I actually have someone who is a expert in mythology and who can
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because they can make me look like a fool. So that's always fun for listeners. So we're about halfway in. So let's talk about the reason you're here, human design,
Okay. Yeah.
which I mean, I've talked to people about human design before, but why don't you just give my listeners what you would call your brief elementary school overview of what it is? I mean, you don't got to go
Yeah.
college on us, but
Okay, so yeah, a slightly formal definition is basically that it is a combination of different ancient modalities such as astrology, the I Ching, the Kabbalah tree of life, and the Hindu chakra system. And this is sort of put all in a pot and mixed in with some more ancient science, more modern sciences such as, quantum physics and biochemistry and things along that lines. And what comes out of this is a very complicated looking chart, which is called your body graph. So, my more formal definition of this would be that basically what this is it is your light signature. It is defining the essence of who you are, your aura, how you are meant to engage with others, how what you are meant to do, who you are meant to be. And the biggest messages of human design are one, following your bliss and following your heart. Because it's believed that, society says you should do this or it needs to look like that. And human design says, no, 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 we're all unique. We're all individuals. And what works for one doesn't mean that's what it's meant to be for the other. And that the things we naturally feel pulled towards, are curious about, excited about, are the things we're meant to follow. And the things that come easy to us and are natural to us are actually our gifts and shouldn't be discredited, because those, once again, are the things that we are supposed to share with the world. That is why they come so effortlessly to us. And so that is a big message of human design. It's also a lot about, just kind of elaborating on that, stepping away from the programs of society. That is a big, heavy theme in human design. Um, you know, evolving and growing and being your own individual person. And there are a lot of very esoteric beliefs about like it seems like there are so many different people that can talk about the new earth and things changing and evolving, and human design too puts a significant weight on the year 2027 and has a lot of beliefs around the fact that we will be significantly evolving physically as a species. But human design helps you get in touch with who you are and your energy, your essence.
Once again, folks, a lot to unpack, but first things first. You heard her, folks. Follow your bliss, which, listeners, guess what? For me, that's you. You're lucky. But because my bliss is podcasting, that's what makes me who I am. That's my individuality. And I didn't find it until I was 34. But I never had a way to get my voice out there in the world. And now I do. That's the great thing. I now do because I found my bliss. And that everything was to be podcasting? No, never. Since I started listening to podcasts back in 2015, 2016.
Okay.
And when I started listening to them, I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool to do. But I never actually thought I would do it or it would be a thing. But here I am, three shows, probably all combined. Actually, well, no, wait, 4 shows, probably all combined, close to 500 episodes. So, and all the countless other ones I've guested on and whatnot. So, I mean, it's
Awesome.
just life at this point, but much to my wife's despise. But so, I mean, yeah, I 100% agree. We're not meant to be cogs in the machine. We're meant to break free and do our own thing. I mean, God, there are so many songs coming to my head in this episode. I don't know why. Actually, I actually just wrote the title for this episode already because something you said struck me, and it's very music related. But my other podcast is a music podcast, so it's kind of my thing.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I'll let you know what it is after we go off air because I don't want to ruin it for future listeners of the actual podcast episode. But yeah, and I mean, 2027 though. See, this can mean so many things to me. Are we going to have nuclear war, and that's why we're evolving because we're going to have radiation? It's going to kind of force us to evolve, or are our masters going to come home finally and give us the ability to evolve to our next stage? I guess. Or is the world going to sink into the ocean and we're going to evolve into Atlanteans? I don't know. But all those seem like possibilities for what she said for 2027, folks. So you've been warned. You've been warned. But I got to ask this because this came to me while you were talking about breaking free of what we're and being an individual. What do you think about the idea of the simulation theory that we're living in a simulation or a matrix for pop culture terms?
Okay. So, I I might not have a definite answer for this, but this is what how I look at it. Um so do I believe that reality is an illusion or subjective? I do. I think that we are more powerful creators than that we realize. And I think that there are a lot of capabilities that we have that we're just not tapped into, which kind of is a hint to the 2027 topic. But I think that we are the powerful co creators of our reality. The key word there is co creators. I do believe that there is some sort of essence. I don't believe in the ideal of heaven or hell. I do, however, on multiple different occasions have heard a lot of reference to there being some sort of galactic location of where we review our lives and where we collaborate with other beings to determine how we want to reincarnate. I think that there's so many fun options to consider. I think my belief, though, while I don't have 100% answer, is this is that if we look at nothing else other than nature and creation in its essence as it is, that I think there is some sort of driving force for expansion, evolution, and growth. And that's from the plants, the animals, the everything. So I believe that there's a part of me that believes that we are moving towards something. Who or what is the essence of that? I don't know. Could you say that's God? Could you say that's just, creation, evolution? I don't know. Do I believe that this is a little bit matrixy or illusionary? Yes, because I believe that we all experience our realities through our own perspectives and illusions. And when we start to understand that and sort of take back that power that we have as co-creators, and we get in touch with, you can talk about the observer effect and quantum, science and things like that. I think that we are able to completely transform what our experiences are. So in that way, I do feel it's, very matrixy, you could say. But to who's running the show, I don't know.
See, you mentioned God and you mentioned evolution slash energy, but you don't say alien overlords, which is a possibility. It's a possibility, people.
I don't know. I tend to when it comes to aliens, concepts of aliens. And I mean, I'm just so excited for something to happen. I'm definitely one of those people that are, out there, beam me up to your leader because I'm so curious, which that's a funny story. One day I did that, like meditating, and I had this like, I won't make this story long, but I had this raccoon like in pitch dark. I'm outside in complete dark, and I'm ready to like see the spaceships, bring it on. And this thing starts coming towards me, and it was pitch dark. Luckily, I had my phone, so I kind of turned my flashlight on and like peeked it up, and it was a raccoon, and I was like, holy. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I have good energy. I have good energy. Please don't attack me. And literally, it came up right to where it was pretty much almost touching me. And I went to move my flashlight because I got nervous, and it stood up, and I was like, okay, nope. All right, I'll sit here. And then it went off, and I was like, dang, I'm not ready for the aliens because this raccoon, scared the living bejesus out of me. So yeah, but I joke that it would be pretty cool, to have that experience. But I tend to see aliens, I think for me, I tend to lean more towards the positive end of that. I mean, that could be naive, because I know in Earth alone there's duality, and there's different stages of evolution and development. And so maybe it's just what helps me sleep better at night. But yeah, I tend to think of aliens more in a positive light than rulership type,
Well,
horror movies.
put it this way though. I mean, I've heard a lot of people who are ancient world experts.
Yeah.
I guess that's the terminology I'd say. But a lot of them all concur that Earth was founded by multiple alien races at the same time.
I believe it. Yeah.
There was kind of a war between different races. So, I mean, if there's good, there's always bad because yin and yang is a real thing in the world. I mean, there's always evil, there's always good. It's just the way it is. And I mean, from what I've heard, it was like the Palladians and the I'm not going to remember the other one, but the Palladians and the other ones who look like, I believe they kind of look like the Camino aliens from Star Wars. That's kind of what I've been told they look like. But
I know there's
what?
one, the Draga, I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, I know they're ones that I think they were in war, if I remember correctly, with the Lyrans.
yeah, Lyrans.
Yeah,
That's one I always
yeah,
forget. Yeah, which I was told the Lyrans look like the Camino aliens from Star Wars, which are basically just tall, very thin aliens. And I believe they faced the Dragons, which we commonly call today reptilians.
yeah, yeah.
So, and that's also when it's believed that when most of the Palladians and the Lyrans left Earth, the reptilians went underground in areas like Los Angeles or future Los Angeles. So that's at least what
Okay,
I've been
yeah.
told. And Hollow Earth theory kind of lends into that as well, somewhat. But I don't know. It does all sound like a lot of sci-fi novels I read as a kid, but still, it's just, what if these things are based on reality to some degree? What if they are?
Yeah.
It's just the way you gotta look at it. And I totally lost my train of thought. But
That's all right.
but yeah, but it's the people who believe in the Matrix or simulation theory to the point where they actually believe that the Matrix was based off real things in life, and that it's kind of like a warning to humans that I've heard that reptilians run it. I've heard that some other alien race we've never even heard of runs it. Like, it's just, who knows? Who knows who's behind the controls and making us do what we do? Is it really? Is it we call it God, but it could be endless things in the end of the day. Really, things we never even thought about existing at this point. Like, it's just creepy. It's creepy, like, just to think about, because it's just like, okay, I don't know what's out there, and that's scary. That's scary.
I think one thing for me at the end of the day, I do believe in free will. I believe in it a little differently, though, I think, than the general idea that most people believe in it. And I believe in it in the sense of it's the free will of our soul to choose our incarnations and our experiences to, go through and be where we are and what we're doing. So I wouldn't say that I believe that there is a maleficent, a bad force that is ruling in the sense of our ability to make decisions for ourselves. But, I also believe that there is some sort of possible factors, because the fact that I went through an unexplainable spiritual awakening, I was not looking for that. That was
Yeah.
not something that I was like one day entertaining at all. And so, because of that, I do feel like that is what influences me believing that there is some reasoning or purpose, or and like I said, that could just be soul expansion. But yeah, I think we do have our we I do believe we're very powerful beings, more powerful than we give ourselves credit.
Oh, we definitely are. It's just, look at all the people that are going in a horrible direction with their lives in their younger days, or even their middle aged days, and they eventually turn around if they are given the right opportunities and are given the support they need, and they turn around, and the people think, like, when they see them, I've not seen them for 5 years because they come out of their lives, they see them and they're like, oh my God, you changed to this. And it's just,
Yeah.
people are capable of so much that we just don't realize it, because the government and society want to keep us down. That's the
Right.
biggest issue, is
Yeah.
the world governments
Absolutely.
want to keep us down because it's just the way it goes, and because they want the power, and it's just sad. People could be so much more. I also think that if we didn't live in the economy type of society we did, that if we went back to the old ways where everybody had to have a trade and do what they
Yeah.
did best, and you trade for things like the old medieval way of living, basically.
Hmm.
I think a lot more people would shine if that was the case,
Yeah.
because they'd have no choice but to find what they're good at and shine at it.
Yeah.
But that's just, we're not going back to that unless there's some kind of nuclear war and it's an apocalyptic world. So that's when money will mean nothing. But until then, we're all here trying to earn a living, and unfortunately, this isn't my living yet. But soon, hopefully, soon. But all right, well, you mentioned Akashic records, which past life readings do fascinate me. I've had a few past life. I can't think of the word. Past life readers, because I can't think of the real word. On the show before, or past life transgressionists. Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, I've had a few of them on the show, and I was actually supposed to have past life reading done like a year ago, but just it never worked out timing wise. So, but I would imagine that Akashic records / past lives and human design go together, because you got to find out where you came from to find out who you are today. That's, in the most simple sense of that phrase, and in the even more complex phrase, if you're trying to figure out your design, like you can't know who you are unless you know where you came from. So, am I wrong in saying that they are very closely related like that, or is it not kind of separate but equal?
I would say that I agree with what you are saying. Would I say that human design provides that information? I probably wouldn't necessarily say that. In general, human design tends to be um, more systematic. There is some esoterics, stuff to it, but it's going to help you evolve in the sense of who you are, the person, whether you live in your fullest expression. Now, I am also a certified Gene Keys guide, and Gene Keys is kind of like another layer that people that are into human design tend to gravitate towards, that focuses more on the I Ching and is more esoteric. And according to that, then there is a belief as far as when you're looking at a particular aspect of the human design chart, it's the astrology 3 months prior to birth, because that's believed that that's when the soul enters into the body in human design. So through the Gene Keys, they share that this is karma. So it is associated with like the things you were meant to come here to evolve and go through. And it is, I guess you could say in ways it's related, because in the beginning I said that it's coming from, the belief that the neutrino stream, those particles influence things, which kind of, is also been referred to as that matter that is the Akashic record. So I guess maybe they could be in some forms connected in the sense of they both are looked at as the mysterious, matter in which that formulates our light signature. But human design doesn't get into as much esoteric information. It's not going to say like, oh, you have this past life, or you're a star seed, or things like that, where I think that a astrologer that specializes in that would be able to pull that information from
Yeah.
something more along that lines. Yeah.
I don't know. All I'm hearing is all these different things I want to have done, but
Yeah.
I need to win the. I think I need to win the lottery first, though, because a lot of them are. Services are not free no matter where you go, folks. That's just life. So I'm not going to say these things are expensive, because they're usually affordable, because these people are trying to make a living, but they're also trying to help people. So they're not going to. Most of them are not going to charge an arm and a leg. There are those that do, but I try not to. I try not to promote those ones. So, but people gotta do them. So no hate either way.
Yeah.
If I could
Well,
charge for podcasting, that'd be a whole different story. So
well, if you ever want me to read your chart as an episode, your human design chart, I would be more than happy to do so. Just let me know.
we'll work on that. We will work on that, because that is something I would very much look forward to. And listeners, just so you know, in the last 2 days, I kind of booked out till December for recordings between this and my other show. So you. You're going to hear a lot of one-on-one brackets coming up soon. But so when I talked about human design people before, they always mentioned shadow work, which
Yeah.
interests me. But sha- what does shadow work like consist of really to you? Like everybody's different. I ask mediums the same. I ask literally every
Yeah.
medium or psychic on the show the same questions because every answer is different. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's interesting because I'm actually in the process of working on having the book that I've written published, which is called Unavoidable and Totally Basic Shadows. And a big essence of what it is about. It talks a lot about what shadow work is, and it shares my journey from, the religious experiences, that I went through to my awakening. So I love this question. So I look at shadow work as this, and simply it is the willingness to stop and sit and entertain the underlining reasoning you're feeling the way you feel. It encourages you to temporarily put aside the concepts of blame or victimization and just say, entertain, okay, why am I feeling the way that I am feeling? And to also take personal responsibility to want to solve that problem for yourself. So, a big key and why I feel like we are in the world the way we are today is because we are so accustomed to receiving our cues, our validation, everything from the external environment, and rarely do we self reflect. So, shadow work is saying, okay, I don't like how you treated me because that made me feel self conscious. Okay, well, if you're doing something that's making me feel self conscious, then I need to start showing up for myself and doing whatever it is I need to be doing for myself to try to soothe that need to feel a certain way so I'm no longer feeling self conscious. And when we can provide those things for ourselves, then we're not being triggered so much by the outside world. We're not putting so much weight on our relationships to be a certain way or do a certain thing. I heard someone say once, I don't know if you've heard of Abraham Hicks, but I love her. She channels, and she made a comment something along the lines where she says, I need you to be on your best behavior and to do everything that I want you to do because I need to feel good. And if you're not behaving how I want you to behave, then I'm not feeling good. And that's a problem. And when you look at it that way, it sounds very selfish. But yet
Mm-hmm.
we've been so conditioned to feel like, oh, how insensitive of you. You're not caring about, what that other person's saying. You're not, those people pleasing and, those things where we get wrapped up with it. So shadow work is the willingness to sit down and to self reflect, as simple as that. It's willing to say, okay, I care about how I feel right now. I want to change whatever this is so that I cannot feel this way. To do that, we have to understand why we feel the way we do. And we get so much, we get so distracted and we rarely consider that for ourselves. So really it's something powerful that you can do with, for yourself. But the key is gentleness and kindness. You can't ask yourself, why do you feel this way, and then beat yourself up about it. You can't go down, oh, I'm worthless and I'm this, and if I did this they would like me this way, or this would be different. You have to ask yourself why you're feeling what you do. You have to be gentle with yourself, and you have to consider solving or the curiosity of fixing that thing for yourself instead of putting the blame or falling into that trap of victimization. And that's tricky to say because I'm in no way saying there's no such thing as difficult circumstances and people going through challenging things.
Mhm.
But at some, like, I was disowned by my parents. At some point, I had to decide to no longer feel like the person that wasn't worthy of being a part of the family. At some point, I had to say to myself, "No, you are worthy of this. You are these things." I had to build myself up. I had to not care as much anymore because as long as I did, I was giving myself that title of the unworthy, unwanted child, the black sheep. On the same regard, my parents are caught up in their childhood traumas and situations they went through. And because of that, my mother has always felt rejected. So she holds that title and she keeps that. Because of that, she's always going to be putting herself in that category as the rejected person because it's impossible for her to see herself outside of that as long as she's claiming that label over her life.
Exactly. And I mean, to put a common phrase on it and to get a laugh, they kind of make you feel like the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you didn't know, if you didn't,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure your face is like, I know where he's going with this joke, the asshole. But yeah, I mean, okay, one, I know a lot of freaking people that need to read that book because I am infamous for peeving people off with some of the jokes I make, like that one, but that a lot 10 times worse. But because to me, even if something is tragic, I can still make light of it
Yeah.
because it's just my personality. But
There's
people get it.
people with that energy for a reason. I
Yep.
wouldn't be surprised if we looked at your human design chart that would be noticeable. My son has a similar gift and it's here for a reason. You're meant to inspire something that brings some sort of shift or attention. So, yeah, it's a gift.
I mean, well, I always thought so. And I mean, people get offended by the shit I say, but it's like I I say them all the time. Like, what makes you get offended by it? Like,
Yeah.
don't just say because it's wrong. Don't just say because it's against what everybody else in society says to do. Just what makes you upset about it. That's the thing. And it's just I've had people come back to me and be like a few months later when they get over it, they're like, okay, I see that I shouldn't have been as offended as I was. Blah blah blah. I apologize, and now we're friends again. But it's just like, why did we need to go through this months of waiting for that to happen? Why couldn't you see
Yep.
it faster? So okay, yeah, I have an idea now for when you're coming back for that, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I want to kind of finish off by talking about your podcast for a second because I always podcasters got to support podcasters and things I talk about. I mean, obviously that name it could be a lot of things, but what is the overall synopsis of what your podcast is about?
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I picked that name because I like to obviously talk a lot. Um, and so I love exploring, possibilities and new ideas and thoughts. And so, the things I talk about is based off of the things that I tend to talk about, which is human design, astrology, mindset, spirituality, basically anything that brings awareness to the individual self and transformation. That's at the end of the day, most all, no matter where, my episodes fall into on that category, there's going to be some message that tends to self reflect, call back to the individual, call back to the individual's expression, and encourage them to do some of the hard work we just talked about with shadow work and things like that.
Well, that's and do you have guests every episode, or is it some episodes just solo?
I do a mix because once again I do like to talk and I have no problem filling up an hour,
All
just
right.
on my own. But yes, I do for the most part. I do have a lot of guests on the show from a wide range of areas that kind of share the similar message. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if I was wearing one, my hat be off to you because I I refuse to do solo episodes of this show. I refuse because my saying is I wouldn't want to hear me talk for an hour. Why should anybody else have to hear that? Why should anybody else have to hear me do that when I wouldn't want to listen to myself for an hour? Because it's just going to go off the rails to 5,000 different destinations. So my hat's off to you because I can't do that. But I mean, could I talk for an hour about Bigfoot or about any paranormal topic? Yeah, probably. But
Well, if it makes you happy, maybe you should try it.
I have another podcast where we do that with a group of people, and it's just topic
Oh,
after topic. So that's
awesome.
that kind of
Yeah.
that finding that a few months into podcasting kind of fulfilled the ever wanting request of me doing solo stuff. Just come listen to that show if you want to hear me talk on a topic for an
Awesome.
hour with a couple other people because I don't do it by myself ever because that just I would get so lost. I would just lose myself in the different topics I come up with. But well, folks, if you want to check out our podcast, please do. I mean, the link for it will be in the description of this episode, as well as the link to anything else that I have for her to share out. And before we wrap it up, tell them where can they find all these things. It'll all be in the description anyway, but tell them anyway, just so they can hear it from your voice.
Sure. Yeah. So most everything can be found under my name, Cassandra DeAnn. That's DEANN. And so my website is CassandraDeAnn.com. On Instagram, I am Cassandra DeAnn, as well as TikTok. So any of that, would work. And I do now, as of this past weekend, have the option for listeners to pull their free human design chart right off of my website. So, yeah, that's pretty exciting. I'm excited about that.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And go check it out, folks. I think if you don't want to know what your human design is and you're just trying to hide from yourself, and come on, you can do better. So, got to encourage people. You got to encourage your audience. So, you all know where you can find me. You can find me streaming on Facebook on the Unapologetic, Untamed, and Uncensored. Yes, I know the order's never the same. UQ Podcast Collective, you'll find it. And you can also find me streaming on Twitter or X now. It's now called X as that Juggalo Bastard. You can find me in the same place on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok as that Juggalo Bastard Podcast. And of course, you can find me on YouTube as Paranormal New Normal. Or you could find me streaming live on Blind Knowledge Network because all knowledge is blind. That was the point of this episode. See, I made it work. So yes, I mean, it really is. And of course, you can always check all the past episodes of Paranormal Normal on any podcatcher you use. So please go check them all out, folks. It's telling you, I've had some good episodes. If you're a new listener, go back and listen. You're gonna be missing a lot of cool shit. That's all I'm saying. And I want to thank Cassandra for coming on today. It's been an amazing episode, and I may actually be pulling a couple clips of this to put on TikTok. I think I always say that I never get around to doing it, but I got to start. My TikTok's been dead for like a year, and I haven't really posted anything. I got to change that. But enough self-reflecting. Until next time, folks, please come back again. I have a lot more coming up for you guys for the rest of this year. Trust me, it's going to be hectic and insane, but I love it. Until next time, folks, have a good one.